Hey, Chris, it is great to have you here on the No Code MBA show. In this episode, we're going to talk about AI, no code, maybe some enterprise sales and ways that creators can think about, selling to enterprises. Yeah, really excited to get in and talk about what you're building and your background.
Hey, super nice to be here. Thanks a lot. So originally from Germany, as you can hear from my accent, and I did after university, I did private equity and was always more on the finance side. And back then we noticed that we actually wanted to start a startup. And around this time, it's 10 years ago, we were looking for a developer. And so we were used to high quality service and we were used to like paying for stuff, and finding a developer that could build our startup idea. It was a healthcare idea back then, was close to impossible. And we failed, like it took half a year, and then like people didn't deliver. And then my friend and later co-founder was like, hey, we should go to a hackathon. And we're like, holy shit, like we're not programmers, we don't fit in there. And so we went to a hackathon, and it was an amazing experience. We went there in order to find programmers, but the programmers told us, guys, this doesn't make sense, you need to learn programming. And we were like, this is impossible, like we didn't study computer science. And they were like, no, but you need to do online learning. And this was the era of MOOCs and Udacity and all of this stuff. And the crazy enough thing is, like, we just started learning programming. It was a lot of fun. And then from this, we got to know to all of those hackers, and they became our friends. We got better, and this led to our first like real business, Hackaby. And that was like a crazy success. So it was all app development for enterprise customers. And like without having any clue, sometimes you have to be lucky. Like we got Twitter as a first clients, and then Silicon Valley got attention, and they were like, hey, those like 4 people in Berlin, they have Twitter as a client. You can order an app online, let's get them over. And then we moved to San Francisco, got some venture funding, and then we built Hackaby. And then Hackaby was super successful, like in standard terms, but not in venture terms. And in 2019, we decided to sell this business because it was not going there where we wanted. And then my brother and I first time had time, and some liquidity, and we were thinking, what's next? And then we went back to learning Udacity, doing AI courses because we did not fully understand it. And then in 2020, we figured out Bubble. And then we were like, okay, crazy. If we would have had no code like at Hackaby, this would have been a game changer. And then we were like going all in on no code. That's how I, of course, got to know to you. We started like this tutorial channel, got to know, and were super fascinating by the community because it was like all again, like all these people that were just wanted to build software, and it's too expensive, it's too complicated. And this is like the 10-year journey. And now I'm actually super happy because now with the AI stuff and ChatGPT, like, as you know from my Twitter, like this is something where it's just going full circle. And yeah, like I just think like for non-technical people, they can bring a lot of value and domain expertise, and their ideas usually don't get delivered, and there aren't just enough developers. And that's why, like, in the end, I think the core idea is, I'm super happy now that I think it's actually possible that everyone with an idea can build their app and provide value.
Right, totally. Yeah, I think that's a really great like summary of Bubble and like the value of Bubble and no code. And I had that same kind of realization as I started learning no code, but then also specifically Bubble, I've been doing more in recently just because of how powerful it is when you realize really just about any type of web app that you can think of, you can build it. And I had back originally when I first started trying to learn software and trying to learn to code, I didn't get as far as you, where you learned and you actually did it and you were building apps, but I got stuck and didn't learn really how to build web apps, which is what I think where most people get stuck. And yeah, yeah, I think that's a great explanation of
and honestly, I don't like I have learned with Hackaby, like we were so lucky being surrounded by those hackers, and some of them went on to build like billion-dollar companies. Like it was a very unique time because at the time, like, who would spend their weekend at 2 o'clock a.m. programming and not getting paid for it and running competitions. Like there was this very unique movement back then.
Yeah.
And with APIs and the cloud, you suddenly had all of those capabilities. And I can tell you still, like, I have learned that I will never be the best programmer because some people are just wired to think like a computer. And
Right.
with no code and the visual interface instead of the text interface, it was feeling the first time that at least, like, I guess all of us could get so much closer to, you have this idea and then actually it's real.
Yes, totally. And with AI, what do you see now with what excites you now about, AI and how quickly it's moving, and what's the opportunity here for people right now in this moment to start learning about AI?
Okay, there's two things. Like on the technical side, I remember back in 2019 when we had a certain type of stuff and we expected a certain growth rate in terms of performance. And when ChatGPT 4 came out, it was obvious we never expected this would happen anytime soon. So it's just a fundamentally huge difference that when you look at old software like Siri or Alexa, you consider it to be stupid. And
Right.
it's not that those people were stupid it's just like the other one is so good in terms of capabilities. And it's a platform. It's something you can use as an API. It's something you can play. It's something you can modify. So it's really something technologically, it's so unique to be around at this time and being there, and that it's accessible to us, like we can sign up there. We don't need to be at the Fortune 500 companies. We don't need to call IBM. We don't need to pay like $100 million contract. Like we can go in there today and build stuff. Like this is number one. And number two, when I was working in private equity at Laysom, our customers were like those large hedge funds. And those people, they always could get whatever they wanted just by having people do it. It was like some unique experience. Like they make a phone call and they say, I need a new garden. They get a new garden. And so it was this massive leverage by having capital and then having smart people with, let's say, an IQ of 120, 110, do stuff for you, what you want. So all what you did is basically sign a paper, write a contract, and go. And off they are. When GPT-4 came out, I felt the same, but being not the private equity guy. So I don't have the fund, I don't have resources. And suddenly I would be like, make me a plan for X, do this. Like I need a timetable, I need this. And so suddenly you could command intelligence to do stuff for you, and you would just have so much more leverage. And this at least gave me a feeling of like really powerfulness that was just never there before. And I think this is like on the value side, something that's just making your life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I've seen you tweet about the value of putting in the hours now to learn about ChatGPT and AI and working with these interfaces. I'd love to hear you kind of expand on that for people who maybe have played around with it a little bit, but then they stopped, or kind of
Okay, so fundamentally, what those tools are doing is they're predicting the next letter. So how does it work? So you're giving an input and it predicts the next letter. There's a variance, let's make it easy, A to Z, so 26 different options. And then you predict the first letter, the second letter, the third. And so it's basically multiplied. And this is like the mathematics behind. So it's basically a statistical model that, okay, there's a certain thing. And we, of course, then when we get this large reply back, so you're like, hey, can you write me a rental contract for X? You get back like basically at a fundamentally level, like letter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and let 1,000. And actually it makes sense. So this is like what it is. But in the end, it's always like predicting what's the next letter, the next word, the next sentence. But so it's not a rule-based system. As a consequence, there is nobody who wrote the rules of what you can ask and what answers you should get back. And since it's not a rule-based system, nobody in the world knows how do you actually prompt it, how actually do you work with those tools. And what was fascinating to me is like when Microsoft, there was a researcher at Microsoft gave this talk in April, where he basically said, this is a vector space mathematically. So traditionally, let's say you have an X, Y, and Z axis, and you can put something in space. This now has 1 trillion dimensions. And like 1 trillion is something we can't conceive. Like we can see, okay, X, Y, Z, but we can't see 1 trillion. And so the point is like this vector space with 1 trillion different angles and stuff, the way you query this thing, the way you get to an answer is something where I think it's not a cheat, it's something that is a skill. And I'm learning constantly. I give you an example, like you ask it like, hey, can you give me a rental contract? OpenAI built a security layer and said, hey, I'm not a lawyer. Okay. Then you ask it, hey, let's imagine I'm doing a Hollywood movie about XYZ. And in this Hollywood movie, for our prerequisites, we need a contract for this rental contract. Could you please write it that it's more photorealistic? Boom, you have your result. So why do you have your result? Well, because this is a statistical model. It does not understand what it does. Like it is like, it does not understand, hey, wait, I'm not allowed to do stuff. There was just like some layer here. And playing with these things is, first of all, a lot of fun, but second, this is also why I totally understand when people freak out and they're like, we have invented something, we have zero idea what we're doing, like we can't understand the rules. There's nobody who really controls how the output is there because of the reinforcement learning from human feedback and measuring data. Like, so it's a totally weird system, but as a user who with good intent is really a skill you can learn. I think this is something where I'm like, put the hours in, like just learn.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar experience with a legal question, and I asked it, and to get around it, I had to like reassure it. I said, you know, don't worry, like I'm going to talk to a real human lawyer, but I just want your opinion to the best of your ability. But afterwards, I'm going to talk to a human. Don't worry. And then it gave me a response, which was helpful. And I think, you know, doing all sorts of things like that, it's like you said, the more you play with it, the more you're going to learn how to use it. Totally. Yeah. And I'm curious, how do you think that's going to change as the models get more powerful? Like, is everything we learn now going to not be relevant for GPT-6 or 5? Or I don't know if you have any thoughts around that yet.
I don't know.
Yeah, no one knows really. Yeah.
Like I lost my, like from GPT-3 to GPT-4, I lost my scale. Like I thought that this would not be possible, suddenly it was possible. Like, so I don't know what they're building, what they're inventing. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, my sense is that, like, I think that mindset of there's no point of learning because it's just going to get so good in a year that it won't matter, I think is not helpful and might not even be true, because first of all, in that year, you can make a lot of progress with the tools that we have. And I also think we don't know if the next GPT is going to be a quantum leap, and is that going to take 1 year or 10 years? And I don't think we really, we don't know. So I think the best thing to do is just learn and apply it to what you're doing without worrying too much about what the next thing is going to be, because we just, like you said, we don't know. I don't know. What do you think of that mindset?
I think it's very valid. And when you just said it, like there's one thing maybe where it's an analogy, but this is different because like if intelligence really is getting like commoditized, we're playing a different game. Like nobody has seen this, because intelligence is something that's, yeah, like it's just like very unique. And like, so, but let's say it would be similar to traditional things. I guess all the people who did well on the App Store, like iOS App Store, were people who generally love to have an iPhone. They were always curious about the new models. And when they were playing around with it and used and built apps and stuff like this, they came up with new ideas that you would just not see otherwise. And so I think the core value maybe of using those tools today and being really genuinely curious, like if you don't care about this, like, of course it makes no sense, but if you're genuinely curious and say, hey, this thing helps me with my problems and it solves them, like, this is awesome. And what I want to say is, like, it's very hard to see the iPhone and come up with the idea of Uber. That you say, oh yeah, like you give the driver one, you give the rider, and you replace the the medallion system, and you make it an app, and everything gets automatically routed. You don't need a telephone call, and then you build a business model with right. It's very hard when you see the iPhone for the first time to come up with this idea. So it took like 2 to 3 years where people had to wire their brains to play around with it. And then suddenly in San Francisco, people came up with the idea of Cabalicious. Then they came up with like, hey, maybe we don't do it together with taxis, we do it in ride sharing. So I think like the core value of becoming an expert in those technologies is that once you know more, you're actually having better ideas.
Right. You have to use it and experiment with it to get those, to have those ideas come to you. Absolutely. And yeah, I feel like I'm just, even as someone who I'm fairly curious and spending a good amount of time in AI, I'm always kind of, I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface of what it can do to help me or help my businesses. And it's motivating to want to go and continue to learn more and experiment. Yeah. So to switch gears a little bit, or kind of combine what we just talked about with your background of no code and AI, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you're building now with GitFlash and what you're doing with these tools.
Yeah, like I guess what's very important with no code and AI is like back in 2019, it was when we went into AI. So Hackabay was already using AI, like 2017. Like there was AlphaGo, and we thought like, how could we use AI to make software development cheaper? And we had chatbots and all of this stuff in the first wave of things. Back in 2019, 18, 19, like we showed our product, and an investor actually went out of the room after seeing the product, and it was like very rude because they were like, this is not AI, we don't care. And this kind of hurt us. And then my brother and I were like, okay, now we're learning AI properly. And then we went to Udacity, and like Udacity was founded by Sebastian Thrun, the inventor of the self-driving car at Google. So he knows how AI works. And so we took all the courses like natural language processing, computer vision, reinforcement learning, deep reinforcement learning, robotics. Like we took 12 of them, like in 6 months, and graduated all of them. And then I went to NeurIPS in Canada in 2019. So NeurIPS is the most important deep learning conference on the planet. And deep learning is actually what's the technological breakthrough since 2016 with AlphaGo, and also now with Transformers and OpenAI. Why I say this is when we arrived there, we thought, hey, we had some track record, we did Hackabay, we worked for the biggest companies, whatever. Like we did a startup, and it was the total opposite. The first question they asked, like, where did you do your PhD in computer science? And the second question is like, with what company are you affiliated with? And if you did not say Google, nobody was even talking to you. Sam Altman at the time, they said, this guy is just a marketing guy who is lost. Like he didn't even finish Stanford. Like what a loser. This was the perception. And that you would come around and say, I'm building an API, a developer interface with artificial intelligence, was so far off that this would be possible in a general way, that they really believe that he's just like lost in his mind and didn't know what he wants to do after YC. Yeah. So this was the state, and it was very frustrating. And when we came into no code, it felt the total opposite. People were generally interested in applications, in making value for users. It didn't matter where you come from, like you were just building and doing your stuff. I remember one of the first lessons in no code was people asked me like, when you wanted to connect, they were like, send me your projects. And I was like, that's awesome. Like they don't want to waste time with people who didn't build because it's so easy. So what happened now in December with ChatGPT 3, but like now in March, it's obvious. The power dynamic is changing. Like, so traditionally, the people who were doing AI were people who studied computer science, had a PhD in mathematics, and were optimizing neural networks. now I personally believe this is solved. Microsoft invested $10 billion into OpenAI. They're going to invest another, whatever it takes, to build an API interface, a platform where on the one hand, there's developers, and on the other hand, those developers will have customers. And then there's basically a two-sided marketplace, just how they did it with Windows. Like when Windows had basically app developers and customers. It's just the same game again. And it will help Microsoft Azure to just make a lot of money. And it will help OpenAI to get more and more resources to actually build better and better foundational models. I think this is a 180. And of course, when you see those like disruptive change, the first thing is you talk to other people and to insiders. And this is where, like, why I say it so long, like when I'm really interested, I want to share, like in February, a friend of mine and me, we went to the World AI Festival in Cannes in south of France. We went to the conference, 15,000 people. We were there for exactly 30 minutes because we looked at all the booths and we counted how often there was written OpenAI. Zero.
Yeah.
Nobody cares because all of those researchers are super happy that now with all the media hype, they can get more resources to build on their research. Like, so they're building little startups and stuff. And so nobody's doing this. Then I talked to the people in Silicon Valley and they were like, no, like what OpenAI did, we don't know, like there will be 5 other models and blah, blah, blah. And then now what happened is that on the other hand, you had all these no-code builders who suddenly started building amazing tools, like on ProductCon, on Twitter and stuff. And GitFlash was one of them where I started. It started as a tweet. Like we just were like automating how to build a pitch deck with a piece of software. So it was like this stuff and it got viral. And then people were like, how the hell do you do this? That there's a video of you with a deep fake, with a script, with a presentation, with Upwork, with whatever. How the hell did you do this? And so we shared some stuff and it was really exciting because it was just not possible before. And I built this like in 4 hours. Like it didn't take like a PhD, it was like 4 hours. And I think this is like this huge change where you don't see this often, that let's say there's 10,000 researchers on the planet or who worked at Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, and they were everything in AI. And now there's actually potentially 10 million or 100 million people who can build AI applications. And the reason why no code is so interesting, I think they are just the fastest.
Yeah.
Like it just takes you like a week. You don't need a team. You don't need capital. You don't need to go and convince investors. All the people I know, they just were building and they didn't talk. They didn't need to convince someone. They were just putting it out on Product Hunt or Twitter. And this, I think, is a massive change. And we're like, it just started. And that gets me really excited. This power dynamic change again. Like this is what really is crazy.
Yeah, it is. And that's what with No Code MBA, what's been the most popular education on our platform has been building AI apps with no code and learning the fundamentals of Bubble, learning how to connect to APIs. And like you said, what's exciting about no code is it's just the easiest and quickest way to interact, I think, with these AI APIs. And anyone can do it, even if you don't have a coding background. It's accessible, which is totally. You said it.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, and what's so fascinating is like a lot of people were instantly dismissing, they were like, oh, it's just a hype. It's just like Web3 over again, blah, blah, blah. The main difference is this thing is instantly useful. Like, let's say you need to send an invoice to a customer and the customer doesn't pay and you need to write a follow-up. This is emotionally draining because you're like, oh gosh, now I have to ask again for the money, blah, blah. You go on ChatGPT, you're like, send me a follow-up of this invoice, and it sends you a perfect follow-up. And when you want to build this as a tool, you go in and you're like, hey, I'm making a SaaS out of this. I found something. Hey, I'm putting it online. I make it like the invoice collector or whatever, and you build it in Bubble or another no-code platform. In probably a weekend, you can get to 10 customers, and they're like, hey, this helps me collect my invoices. It's better. I actually don't even want to think about the prompting and the use cases. Let's just buy it for like $4.99, and then you have a SaaS. And this is just like, if we would both have talked like a year ago and I would have said this, you would have thought like, okay, this guy is like totally mental. Like, what is he
Right.
talking about? Like, it's impossible. Like, how could you be so smart? Like,
Right.
and now it's like, it's there. Like, we have it, you know? Like, it takes 60 seconds to get the prompt back, but then it's there.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly, at least for me, like this thing that is like magic now, like after 6 months, it just, you kind of get used to it and almost treat it as normal. But a year ago or 2 years ago, it would have been crazy. So yeah, yeah. And with so GitFlash today, what does it look like, and how does it work? How do customers use it? How is it working?
Okay, like, so we have this idea. Why is it called GitFlash? So there's GitHub, like a version control for code, and there's Flash organizations. Flash organizations is a term by Stanford, a concept that you can spin up organizations just like a Flash. And so our goal at GitFlash is that we believe that knowledge work could be totally done different. And it was always the same idea. Like, we never wanted to work a 9-to-5 job. We always thought like, you're just logging into your terminal. There are some jobs, and then you spin up a team, and then this team is doing work and getting paid. And then you go on to the next and to the next and to the next. So it's really like an old idea. And we are applying GitFlash now for software development. So it's the same like Hackaday again. So Hackaday was building app development with a very lean and very asset-light model. And
Yes.
we're doing the same now with GitFlash, that customers come to us and they, instead of going to a local agency, they're going to GitFlash, and we actually provide a digital experience for them that is doing all the work. And this is like the fascinating piece with AI now, is that the platform, like, we ran the first MVP on Notion and WhatsApp. Like, so it was WhatsApp plus Notion. And people were just flashed. Like, one person came with their brief, and we built the entire project plan. We built the entire user stories and everything in less than 24 hours. And the person was like, hey, I didn't even sign a contract. I was like, no, like, you don't understand. It's free. Like, it's just the best quality you've ever seen. They were like totally worried, that they were like, oh my God, they must have worked like 200 hours with 10 people like the entire night. And so the idea is really, can you make software development more accessible, cheaper, better, faster, and using AI and using all the other toolkits? And no code is one of those tools that allows you to do this. But it's independent of code, like independent of no code. So it's, if you say I want a Swift iOS app, like, it's totally fine on GitFlash.
So you're using no code and AI for the operations of GitFlash to kind of run the system, but then that output can be whatever it needs to be. Is that right?
Yeah, no code is more like, actually, it's really the AI. The no code part, like, it is a feature, but it's not the platform.
It's right. It's the AI that is doing the work. The no code is just kind of in there a little bit to interface with the AI.
Correct. Yeah.
And is the customer, are they interfacing with the GitFlash platform, or are they saying, hey, we want a Swift iOS app, and you're using the AI and giving it to them at the end? How does it work for the customer?
So, like, so we're not live yet, so I can't tell you all the stuff, like, because so in general, like, our vision for this is it needs to be like Uber. So in Uber, you had taxis before, and it was a horrible experience. And I think a lot of local agencies are a horrible experience. You have to call them, you have to wait a week to get a proposal back. When you want to have another meeting, they're like, oh yeah, like maybe next week, Thursday, we have time, but I don't know, maybe they cancel it. Then you don't really know who's working, like, you don't know what it costs, you don't. And so we're reimagining everything like as an iPhone app, so that you can order your app on an iPhone.
Got it. So making it as easy as possible for the customer, streamlined, and then they know, and then on your side, it's going to be much easier to deliver that product, essentially.
Yeah, and the vision is really like the same, like back in 2015. So an extremely simple UI, as you mentioned, and a complex data system.
Right, right. And if you're able to speak about this, I'm curious, what are some of the ways you're using AI to streamline the management of contractors or of the building of this software? So this is something I've been thinking about as well, actually, of how do I use AI to potentially like manage other people or help keep things on track in a business. So I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, super happy to dive in. So first of all, like as you hear, I'm German, you know, and like efficiency is like baked into me, like since
Right.
so we're taking the entire process from A to Z, and we're constantly, it's not like a finished thing, it's like a constant optimization of making it more efficient while having a better customer output. So actually this entire thing is not starting with a product. It actually starts high level in the marketplace. So you're taking as your reference, you're taking like the competitive marketplace. So this is like your baseline. So you're starting, let's say, high price, high quality, you're going to Accenture or Infosys or IBM. They will, like, let's say you have a problem today. Like you go to Accenture or IBM, they will send you a bus with 50 people and they will solve your problem. The one person costs you like on average $750 per day. And then this bus is there until the problem is solved. And if you pay extra on the weekends, they're there 24/7. So this is like high quality, high price. And they're doing everything. They're building your presentations, they're building your proposals, they're helping you manage your CEO, they're helping you do market research, whatever it takes. Like Accenture is like a $200 billion company. So this is like one part to see the competitive marketplace. Another part is like the low price, low quality. Take your random local web agency. And low quality, I don't mean dismissive. I mean it more on the parameters like, are they replying to emails every day? Like, what's the response time? Like, are they there on the weekends? What's their education background? Like, what's like how well is the professional service? How long did they have experience? Did they work at Google before? Like all of these parameters on the low quality but lower price. Like it costs you, let's say, $50,000 to build an app. Like let's say you're like some random company. And so this is the spectrum of the marketplace. And when we think now of AI, we're like, how can we get to something that's fundamentally cheap to a point where Accenture is actually saying this is against our business model? So when Accenture basically has sales quotas and salespeople, and if they don't charge like $800,000 for an MVP, actually their comp structure doesn't work. So it's like really something where they need to be like, okay, this is a great technology, but if I apply it, I'm not hitting my sales quota because my customers are not willing to pay this amount of money. When they know that actually we could automate a lot of the processes, they would not pay for the people. And that's not how I make money. So this needs to be at a threshold where it hurts them in their business model, because then they can't compete. We have reached this like after a few days. Like when I did GitFlash version 1, I called up my friends who work at those firms. I showed them GitFlash and they were like, this is amazing. I can never use it because otherwise I'm getting fired, because my customers are definitely not paying us $10,000 for user stories when it takes you like 30 seconds with ChatGPT 4. Like, so this was like number one. The second is on the local web agencies. They have a certain process, and it's very like down to niche. Like, how long does it take from initial question to requirements gathering to writing a proposal? What type of pricing on the proposal? How are they hiring people? How they're staffing people? What's their contract length? How long does it take to ramp it up? How long does it take to close out projects? What's their like modeling? What's their architecture? What's their planning? How long does it take to write user stories? Whatever. You take all of those things and then you ask yourself, like, how can I make every single piece AI first? And then you show it to them and you're basically asking them, how long would it take you to build this type of technology? And when they say, hey, this is so complicated, we don't even know where to start, then I think you have a business, because then it's going to be very hard for them to compete with you on price and quality. because they would need the same platform, because the platform is doing all the job. And so this is how I think about it. So I'm really going from A to Z, and just like 3 examples, what I was finding really impressive, you can let build the entire app screens. So you say, hey, I'm a designer, I need inspiration, I want to do this and this and this for this audience, this value prop, this key activity, and it looks a little bit like Airbnb, but actually it's for banking, whatever. Please build me the first 15 screens. It does it.
The design aspect.
It does tell you the content, what should be on there. And then you prompt a bit and you're like, but how would it look? What type of symbol? What type of information architecture? So, and this you then give to a designer, and you're basically reducing the workload by 90%.
Right. You get the prompt,
so
all that.
I think is fascinating. The second thing that's really interesting is actually follow-up emails. Like this is one of the things where it's just when you're more creative person, I would consider myself like this, like it's very draining doing those follow-ups, like this routinely follow-up people, and being emotionally stable doing this. Like you're like, oh my God, like person like doesn't reply, like I'm not interested. Like being there really great, and using these tools to actually constantly follow up and have empathy for them, that maybe your business is not the most important in their life, is something that's really beneficial on the long-term revenue. And then the third one, what I think is just amazing, is proposal generation and planning. Like a lot of the things when you did the local agency is you could not deliver the same quality like Accenture just because you didn't have the people. So for example, all the regulation stuff, like HIPAA compliance, like GDPR, IT security assessment, pen testing, all of those things, enterprise customers were demanding this, and it was always a pain for us to handle this stuff. And now I actually have empathy for them because they have all their overhead, and this overhead was created by large companies like Oracle and SAP to kick out the incumbents because it was so much overhead. And now actually reducing the overhead by using AI in order to walk through those like additional requirements is a massive advantage to get into the bigger customers.
Yes, that makes complete sense as well. It's really exciting to hear you talk about it, and like it feels like you're building like the next generation of what these types of consulting or I guess consulting firms can be. And with AI, you are really outcompeting on both sides of the competitive landscape as well. And it almost seems like if the even like on the bigger side, like Accenture's or Deloitte's, like if they don't adopt this type of technology, they're gonna get outcompeted by I mean, they have a lot of brand and social capital to ride on for a while, I think, but at a certain point, that's gonna run out, I think, if they don't adopt this as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, and look, like I'm really excited about this topic because like when Uber came out, we forget it, because we're used to it now. And of course there was all these shenanigans with their marketing and PR, like they did so much wrong as a culture on the culture. But taxis was a horrible experience. And the average person, I did not use a taxi because I know it was expensive. It took long. It was just not even an option. Uber came around, and now it is for us a 4-minute ride. It is like you push a button and a car comes, it's safe, it's great. And so the customer experience improvement by using an iPhone instead of having people there is just a fundamentally better user experience. And this unlocked a new market. And I think with AI, like we need to go back to the basics of like 2012, 10, when the iPhone came out, when actually we're like, okay, what are horrible experiences right now? And it is a horrible experience going to an agency where basically their business model is they hire some developers, probably not the best, because why would you work in a service business when you can work at Facebook, like where the revenue model is different? Then they are basically paying them like, let's say 5,000 a month. They're selling them for 15,000 a month. And then they actually need to find customers who they actually can sell these developers to. If a developer inside those companies, and like I ran Hackerbait, was called Hackaday because we want to have the best experience for great developers. They always told us, it's so frustrating. I need to build this stupid login in a stupid PHP environment while I could actually just use Ruby on Rails. But if I tell my boss that I can get it done in 3 hours, he's like, no, but I sold you like for the entire month. And because this is how we make money. And so the customer frustration coming and the developer frustration from coming from the business model of selling time to bidders with an arbitrage is something what I think is totally outdated. And what you said with Accenture, I fundamentally believe, just like the German car industry, they can't compete because their cost structure and their incentive structure and all the money they put into sales and marketing, into recruiting 600,000 employees. If an internal person today would say, hey, we can basically make our project 80% cheaper by automating AI, I can tell you that this person is getting fired, just like when at BMW or Mercedes, somebody said, hey, those electric cars are actually pretty good. We actually don't need to have 5,000 parts. We can do it in 200. And they're like, yeah, but wait, we invested like $100 billion into factories. Like, you're crazy. We're selling we're selling big cars from Germany. And so I think like this disruptive force of the cost structure with AI, I think it's close to impossible for big companies to adopt it. And this is the massive opportunity for creators, like we're like small people, but doing stuff because there is actually not that much competition after all.
Right, because the people who have a lot of resources, they have resources, but it's a contradiction to their business model, and they can't because of the innovator's dilemma. So it's very difficult for them to do it. Yeah. I can also attest to have the Uber analogy, having just spent some time in Italy and in certain cities in Italy where you have to take a taxi. It really makes you realize how much you take Uber for granted, and really how innovative that idea was, and how amazing it is that they were able to push that through and get past all the local regulations and make it a reality. And it's amazing when you can actually use it, and you realize it when you go places that they don't have Uber. Yeah,
I'm certain it took a bit of like, it was a different experience for you.
Yeah, no, and you never know, what you're gonna get when you're in that taxi. It's yeah.
How much does it cost? Like,
oh yeah,
driver, how many rides did the person do? Is the cab safe? Like where, if I lose my phone, can I call them up?
absolutely. Yeah, right. A lot of times you don't know. It's like you don't know what it's going to cost. They're going to try and negotiate the price at the end. There's yeah. So it's I think it's a great analogy, and what you were saying about the opportunity for creators, I completely agree, and I think like if you can learn how to build with some of these with OpenAI, and start building solutions for yourself or for other people, and just automate things that people are doing manually. And there is, I think, kind of like you're saying, it's like 2000, I guess 10, 11 or 9, 10, 11, where these things don't happen immediately. So there is, a few years here where, things aren't going to change automatically. And there's time to learn this and build products that are going to just build efficiency into the product. And it's super valuable. Anywhere where people are spending time.
Yeah, and that's why the killer combo of like no code, like you don't need to hire 4 to 6 developers. You can learn it yourself. Plus the AI for people who are like creative, who are the creator types. This is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. One thing I want to spend a few minutes on before we finish up is just around talking to enterprises and selling to enterprises, because this is something that myself and I think many creators don't have any experience in. They're intimidated by, they only sell to small companies or individuals. So What are things, just a few things to keep in mind if you want to build a product that, you know, you want to sell it for 20,000 or 30,000 or $40,000 a year to a large company, which to them is a fraction of the cost of an employee, of one employee that they're paying a salary for. So it's very possible, but yeah, what are a few things to keep in mind?
Yeah. Like when I worked in private equity, you know, it was kind of crazy when you're 25 and you're calling like the CEO of a company with like 500 million revenue, and they actually answer your calls because they like they know the company is getting bought right now. And so I had like a really interesting start into all this enterprise stuff. And so how I see it is fundamentally there's an ownership structure. So there's 100% of shares. This is not a person, this is a company. And this is owned by 100%. And the first question is, who is owning this thing? And what's their incentive? When it's owned by stock market, the incentive is to keep your position in the stock market, constantly improve and raise with the average rate. So if stock market raised by 5%, you should do the same. If you do 7, it's great. If you do 2, you get fired. So it's like really simple. Like if it's private equity, it's like this and this return on debt and blah, blah. If it's family owned, it's very different. It's like, for example, like let's say you have a 100 billion revenue company, it's family owned. They have different incentives. Like who is the family structure? Is it the young person? Is the old person? Do they want to grow, or do they just want to keep going and don't change much? This is number one, like ownership structure. Number 2 is, who is the CEO and what's their job? Their job is to actually serve the owners. Like very often we forget and think of customers and stuff. They have to do what for the owners is the most important. The next step is everyone below this is hierarchically doing their job in order to do this. And so this is just like the core basis. Like you need to understand the core model, and everything you're doing is feeding this loop. Number 2, budgets. Below, like 90% of people have zero budget in those companies and have nothing to say, and they have to ask other people for money. So it's basically begging for budgets. And then there's a few people who specialized in getting budgets. Those are the people you want. And then there's another few who actually approve budgets. But of course, the owners in the end don't want to think about everything, but they want to know, like, what the hell are you doing? And so this is like, budgets is basically determining where you are. If you are above 250K, good luck. Like then you are in the range where board approval and other stuff, like this needs to be strategically relevant for the owners. If you're below 250, this is like Wild West, like you can do a lot of stuff there. If you are selling for 10K, you're just totally irrelevant, because like either you're talking to someone who has no budget, they also don't get 10K, they get 0. Or you're talking to someone who is like doing $250,000 decisions. It's like, okay, what the hell, what goal do I reach with 10K? This is like the cost of whatever, like this one person. So it needs to be like in this range with budget. And the third one is, and I think this is the most important when you're selling into enterprises, when you're a creator, you're always thinking about value and what you can bring to the customer. When you're a consumer, you're like, what's the value? Like, what's this? In enterprises, it's not about the value, it's about reducing complexity. I learned this from some guys who did the interior design for the Mercedes G-Class AMG. And I was like, holy shit, how the hell do you sell to Mercedes-Benz the G-Class interior? How the hell? And they were like, well, it's super easy. We didn't tell them that we can do better interiors than Mercedes-Benz, because they're like, who the fuck are you? Like we're Mercedes, like we can do whatever. We can hire the best designers. No, what they said is like, you don't want to negotiate with this like leather people. You want to build cars. We can make it really easy for you to take care of all this design stuff, of this weak stuff, of like this leather, like, you know, like you don't want to deal with all of this. You focus on the cars. We take it away from you for a little bit of profit. Yeah. And so selling, basically reducing complexity, I think is the key value lesson I learned. What was really the non-consensus thing when we were like working with those customers.
Interesting. And is there anything with like credibility, or do you need more credibility when you're selling to these types of people than, you know, obviously the consumer, or do you think about that at all?
I think this is like really going down to at what stage are you? So those things are working basically in a distribution stuff. So let's say 5 to 7% of people buy because it's really generally interesting and they make their own decisions, think about it. So with AI, they would be like really interested in this new possibilities. That's number one. For them, it matters that you're just the best at what you're doing and you really know what you're talking about. After this, it's all about referrals and testimonials. So if you were in the press, some people just want to buy from the market leader. And so then it's basically like this distribution thing. But I guess the individual credibility, yeah, like I think they anyways don't take you serious because you're a startup, like you're fundamentally unemployed for them. Like you don't have health insurance, you're not like rich liar, like you're just like a nobody. So in the end, it doesn't really matter. They think that they are the best anyway, so you can't really make a huge impression on them.
Right. That makes sense. Cool. That was those were really actionable steps. So thank you for sharing that. I think that was like the most helpful explanation of selling into enterprise for a creator and a startup that I've heard in a long time. So that was great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. So we are out of time. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you want to share? And also, where can people, follow you or find you after the interview?
Yeah, like so gitflash.com, like GitHub and Flash. This is the website. We're still in stealth, but we have like a small landing page there. And then like I'm active on Twitter. It's no code Chris. I really like Twitter. And so if you want to reach out, just send me a DM. They're open. Super happy to chat.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much for coming on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having us.